The thornwood was no place for the hunted, and as Seren ran through the blackened trees, blood trailing from the gash in her side, she knew her time had run out. They had found her again. They always found her. For 9 years she had survived. 9 years of running, hiding, watching everyone she loved be slaughtered one by one for the crime of her existence. The void blood mark on her back condemned her. It condemned everyone who sheltered her. So when the hunters cornered her at the river's edge, when she collapsed from exhaustion and blood loss with nowhere left to run, Seren had accepted death. Then Alpha King Valdric appeared. His warriors surrounded the hunters. His presence alone made them cower. And when their leader demanded he hand over the void blood abomination, the king's response was 3 words that changed everything. "She is mine." He brought her to his fortress. He promised her safety, protection, a life where she would never run again. His gray eyes held no warmth, but his word was law. Seren believed him. She let herself believe that after years of blood and terror, she had finally found sanctuary in the arms of the most powerful alpha on the continent. Then she found the exile order, his seal, his signature, dated the very night he had carried her through his gates. He had promised her safety with his lips while his hand signed her banishment. Neither of them understood what that betrayal would truly cost. The hunters had been tracking her for 6 days. Seren could smell them even now, their sweat and bloodlust carried on the wind that cut through the thornwood. Her legs burned. The wound in her side had reopened hours ago, and each step sent fresh agony radiating through her ribs. But she kept moving. Stopping meant dying. Stopping meant they won. The thornwood was ancient and cruel, a forest that swallowed travelers whole and spat out only bones. Most wolves avoided it entirely, but most wolves were not being hunted by the Crimson Order. Seren had learned to survive places others feared. It was the only reason she was still breathing. A branch snapped somewhere behind her. Close. Too close. She pushed harder, ducking beneath a fallen oak, scrambling up a rocky incline. The moon was hidden behind clouds, but her wolf's eyes needed no light. She could see the river ahead, black water rushing over stones. If she could cross it, she might mask her scent long enough to find shelter. 50 more steps, 40, 30. An arrow sang past her ear and buried itself in a tree trunk. There she is, the void blood runs. Dread pooled in her stomach. She stumbled, caught herself, kept running. The river was so close now. 20 steps, 15. Another arrow. This one caught her calf, and she cried out as she fell. The water rushed beneath her. So close. She had been so close. Boots surrounded her. 5 hunters, maybe 6. Their leather armor bore the crimson serpent of the order. Their eyes held nothing but zealous hatred. 9 years we have chased this abomination, their leader said. He was a massive man with a scarred face and filed teeth. 9 years of dead ends and false trails, but the hunt ends tonight. Seren tried to rise. Her leg buckled beneath her. The void bloods were supposed to be extinct, another hunter spat. Her whole pack was burned. How did this one survive? Does it matter? The leader drew a curved blade from his belt. The last of her kind dies here. Seren looked up at the blade, at the hatred in their eyes. She thought of her mother, burned alive while Seren hid beneath the floorboards. Her father, torn apart by wolves who should have been his brothers. Her baby brother, whose only crime was sharing her blood. All dead. Because of what she was. Because of what she carried. The mark on her back seemed to burn beneath her torn clothing, the swirling black lines that branded her a monster from the moment of her birth. Any last words? Abomination? The leader asked. Seren closed her eyes. I hope it was worth it, she whispered. Hunting a girl for 9 years. I hope it made you feel powerful. The leader raised his blade. And then the world exploded. Wolves burst from the tree line. Not hunters. Warriors. Their armor was midnight black, their movements precise and devastating. The hunters barely had time to scream before they were overwhelmed. Seren watched in shock as the scarred leader was thrown to the ground, a massive black wolf pinning him with one paw on his chest. Then, the wolf shifted. The man who rose from the transformation was unlike anyone Seren had ever seen. Tall, broad-shouldered, with hair the color of winter frost and eyes like frozen silver. Power radiated from him in waves that made her wolf whimper in submission. She knew that face. Every wolf on the continent knew that face. Alpha King Valdric of Ethermoor, the Frost Throne, the Unbroken. "Your Majesty," the hunter leader gasped, "this creature is a void blood. The Crimson Order has standing authority to—" "You are in my territory," Valdric said. His voice was cold, empty of emotion. "Hunting in my lands, without my permission. The Void Blood Treaty does not supersede my sovereignty." The king's eyes moved to Seren, and she felt the weight of that gaze like a physical force. "This wolf is in my domain. That makes her mine." The hunter's face twisted. "You would protect an abomination? A void blood?" Valdric's expression didn't change. "I would protect what belongs to me." He gestured to his warriors. "Escort these hunters to the border. If they resist, kill them." As the hunters were dragged away, the Alpha King approached Seren. She tried to rise again, failed again. The blood loss was making her dizzy, and the world swam at the edges. Valdric knelt before her. Up close, she could see how pale his skin was, how cold his eyes seemed. Beautiful and terrible, like a statue carved from ice. "Can you walk?" he asked. Seren shook her head weakly. Without another word, he lifted her into his arms. His body was cold against hers, unnaturally so for a shifter. But his grip was gentle, almost careful. "You are safe now," he said quietly. "No one will hunt you in my lands." Seren wanted to ask why. Why would a king save a void blood? Why would anyone? But the darkness was pulling at her, and the last thing she saw before unconsciousness took her was the pale silver of his gaze. She didn't see the way those eyes softened, just for a moment, as he carried her toward home. Seren woke to silk sheets and the smell of lavender. For a long moment she simply lay there, certain she was dreaming, or dead. Perhaps this was the afterlife, a soft bed and warm blankets after years of cold earth and borrowed floors. Then the pain in her side flared, and she knew she was very much alive. She sat up slowly, taking in her surroundings. The room was enormous, larger than any house she had sheltered in during her years of running. Velvet curtains framed tall windows. A fire crackled in a marble hearth. The bed itself could have held 6 people. "You're awake." Seren's head snapped toward the voice. A woman stood by the door, elderly, with kind eyes and gentle hands. She wore the simple dress of a servant, but something in her bearing suggested she was more than that. "Where am I?" Seren asked, her voice rough. "The king's fortress, Ethermoor Keep." The woman approached with a tray of food. "I am Helene. I have been tending your wounds." Seren looked down at herself. Clean bandages wrapped her torso and calf. Someone had bathed her, dressed her in a soft sleeping gown. Someone had seen her back. "The mark," Seren whispered, panic rising. "Did anyone?" "Only I saw it," Helene said gently, "and I will tell no one. The king gave orders that your privacy be protected." The king. Right. The Alpha King who had saved her from hunters for reasons she still did not understand. "Why?" Seren asked. "Why did he save me? Void bloods are hunted everywhere. We are abominations. There is a treaty." "The king does not explain his decisions to servants?" Helene interrupted softly. "But he has requested to see you, once you are well enough to walk. I suggest you ask him yourself." Seren ate because her body demanded it, not because she tasted anything. Her mind was racing. The Crimson Order had authority in every kingdom to hunt void bloods. It was written into treaties signed generations ago after the Voidblood uprising that nearly destroyed the shifter world. The mark on her back, the swirling black lines that appeared at puberty, branded her as a descendant of that cursed bloodline. Her wolf was tainted, they said. Dangerous. An abomination that needed to be exterminated for the safety of all wolves. She had been running since she was 14. She was 23 now. 9 years of blood and fear and watching everyone she loved die. And now a king had plucked her from death and placed her in silk sheets. It made no sense. 2 hours later, Helene led her through corridors that seemed carved from moonlight and shadow. The fortress was cold, despite the fires burning in every room. Seren found herself shivering beneath the cloak Helene had provided. They stopped before a heavy oak door. Helene knocked twice, then withdrew. "Enter," came the voice from within. Seren pushed open the door. The study was sparse but elegant. Maps covered the walls. A desk dominated the center, piled with documents. And standing by the window, silhouetted against gray afternoon light, was Alpha King Valdric. He turned as she entered. Those winter storm eyes swept over her, assessing. "You look stronger," he observed. "I heal quickly." Seren remained near the door, uncertain whether to bow or kneel or run. "Your Majesty, I need to understand. Why did you save me?" Valdric's expression revealed nothing. "You were dying in my territory. I chose to prevent that. I am a void blood. The Crimson Order has authority to hunt my kind in any kingdom. By saving me, you have defied the Continental Treaty. I am aware of what I have done." "Then why?" Seren pressed. "No one helps voidbloods. We are monsters, abominations. Everyone who has ever sheltered me has died for it." A shadow crossed his face, gone before she could name it. "Perhaps I do not believe everything I am told about monsters," he said quietly. Before Seren could respond, he moved to his desk and picked up a document. "I have a proposition for you." "A proposition. You will remain here, in Ethermore Keep. You will be hidden, protected. No one will know what you are." He set the document down. "In exchange, you will serve a purpose." Seren's stomach tightened. "What purpose?" "I require a bride." The words were flat, emotionless. "My council has demanded I take a mate to secure alliances and produce heirs. You will be that bride." Seren stared at him. "You want to marry a voidblood? I want to marry someone who has no connections, no family that will interfere, no expectations beyond survival." His eyes met hers. "You fit those requirements." It was brutal in its honesty. He was not offering love or partnership. He was offering a transaction. "And if I refuse?" Seren asked. "Then you leave, tonight. The hunters will find you within the week." Silence stretched between them. Seren thought of the endless running, the cold nights, the constant fear that turned every shadow into a threat. She thought of her mother's screams, her father's blood, and her brother's tiny body going still. She thought of silk sheets and warm fires, and a king who looked at her without hatred. "If I agree," she said carefully, "what exactly would you expect from me?" "Public appearances when necessary. An heir, eventually." His jaw tightened. "Beyond that, nothing. We will not share a life. We will not share affection. I will protect you and provide for you, but I will never love you." The words should have stung. Instead, they felt like relief. "You are telling me," Seren said slowly, "that you will give me safety, shelter, and ask nothing but occasional appearances and children?" "That is correct. And you will never love me. I am incapable of it." The flatness in his voice made her believe him. Seren looked at this cold, beautiful king who was offering her everything she had never dared hope for. Safety, protection, a life where she would not wake every morning expecting to die. "I accept your terms, Your Majesty." His mask slipped briefly. Surprise, perhaps, as if he had expected her to refuse. Very well, the wedding will take place in 3 days. He turned back to the window, dismissing her. Helene will prepare you. Seren moved toward the door, then paused. Your Majesty? He did not turn. Yes? Why are you so cold? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Your skin, your presence. Shifters run hot, especially alphas, but you feel like winter. For a long moment, he did not answer. When he spoke, his voice was distant. That is not your concern. The dismissal was clear. Seren left without another word. But as she walked back through those glacial corridors, a single thought repeated in her mind. Cold over death, she decided. I will choose cold over death every time. She did not yet know how much that choice would cost her. 3 days passed like a fever dream. Helene and a small army of servants transformed Seren from a hunted fugitive into something resembling a queen. They bathed her in oils that smelled of roses and moonflower. They styled her dark hair into elaborate braids woven with silver thread. They dressed her in gowns that cost more than entire villages. And they never once looked at her back. Seren did not know what Valdric had told them, but the servants treated her with quiet deference. No whispers followed her, no sidelong glances of suspicion or disgust. It was so different from every other place she had ever been that she sometimes forgot to breathe. The wedding itself was a blur, a cold ceremony in a colder cathedral, with a king who spoke his vows like they were battle orders, and a bride who could not quite believe any of it was real. When the priest pronounced them mated, Valdric did not kiss her. He simply took her hand, his fingers ice against her skin, and led her from the altar. The court watched in confused silence. A queen no one had ever seen, wed to a king who touched her like she might shatter. That night, Valdric came to her chambers. Seren's pulse quickened as he entered, but he did not approach the bed. Instead, he stood by the door, hands clasped behind his back. The marriage must be consummated, he said flatly, for political legitimacy. But if you are not ready— I understand, Seren interrupted. Her voice was steadier than she felt. I agreed to give you heirs. I will honor that agreement. Emotion surfaced briefly in his gaze. This is not a demand. If you need time— I have been running for 9 years, Your Majesty. Seren rose from the bed, approaching him slowly. I have been cold and hungry and terrified for so long that I have forgotten what safety feels like. You have given me that. She stopped an arm's length away. The least I can do is fulfill my end of our bargain. Valdric studied her face for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and touched her cheek. His fingers were cold, but gentle. You are braver than you know, he said quietly. Then he extinguished the candles and darkness fell over the room. What followed was nothing like the violence Seren had feared. He was careful with her, almost tender. His hands explored her slowly, learning her responses. When she gasped at the cold of his touch, he paused until she adjusted. When she tensed, he stilled. And when they finally came together, it was with a gentleness that made her throat tight. Afterward, he lay beside her in the darkness. Seren could hear his breathing, controlled and even. You are warmer than I expected, he said quietly. Seren almost laughed. And you are colder. A pause. Then, so soft she almost missed it. I have always been cold. She wanted to ask what he meant. She wanted to understand this strange king who saved monsters and married strangers and touched her like she was something precious. But before she could speak, he rose from the bed. She heard him dressing in the darkness. Thank you, he said from somewhere near the door. For tonight. Then he was gone. Seren lay in the empty bed, his cold still lingering on her skin, and wondered what she had married. The formal introduction came a week later. The great hall of Ethermore Keep was filled with nobles, lords, and ladies from across the kingdom. They had come to see their new queen, this mysterious woman who had appeared from nowhere and wed their cold king. Seren stood at the top of the grand staircase, Valdric beside her. She wore a gown of midnight blue that covered her completely, and a thin veil that obscured her features without hiding them entirely. Valdric had agreed that some mystery would serve them better than full exposure. "You are trembling," he observed quietly. "There are 200 people staring at me. They are staring at their queen. There is a difference." Before she could respond, they began their descent. The whispers started immediately. Seren could hear fragments as they passed through the crowd. Where did she come from? No family name announced? Is she common-born? Why does she wear that veil? She kept her eyes forward, her hand resting lightly on Valdric's arm. His presence beside her was like a wall of ice, cold and unyielding, and somehow that made her feel safer. They reached the dais where 2 thrones waited. As Seren took her seat, the crowd fell silent. "My lords and ladies," Valdric's voice carried through the hall without effort. "I present to you Seren, Queen of Ethermore. She is my mate, my wife, and your sovereign. You will treat her with the respect her position demands." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Seren saw the calculating looks, the whispered consultations. These were wolves who traded in power and secrets. A queen with no history was an anomaly they would want to solve. "Your Majesty." A man stepped forward from the crowd. He was tall and lean, with sharp features and sharper eyes. His clothing marked him as high nobility. "May I offer congratulations on your union?" "Lord Talmec," Valdric said, his voice dropping several degrees. "How kind of you." "The court is naturally curious about our new queen." Talmec's smile did not reach his eyes. "Perhaps she might tell us something of her family, her bloodline?" The question was a trap, and they both knew it. Bloodlines meant everything in shifter society. A queen without a notable lineage was a weakness to be exploited. "My queen's past is her own concern," Valdric said flatly. "Her present is as my wife. Her future is as the mother of my heirs. That is all the court needs to know." Talmec's smile sharpened. "Of course, Your Majesty. I meant no offense." His eyes slid to Seren. "I am certain our queen has nothing to hide." The words hung in the air like a blade. Seren felt her mark burning beneath her gown. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear before someone looked too closely and saw the monster beneath the silk. But Valdric's hand found hers beneath the table. His grip was cold and firm. "Lord Talmec," the king said quietly, "if I discover you have been investigating my queen's background without permission, I will consider it a personal insult, and I respond to personal insults very poorly." The threat was unmistakable. Talmec's face went pale. "Of course, Your Majesty, I would never dream of it." He retreated into the crowd, but his eyes followed Seren for the rest of the evening. The feast that followed was a blur of rich food Seren could not taste, and conversations she could not follow. She smiled when required, nodded when appropriate, and counted the minutes until she could escape. Finally, mercifully, Valdric rose and announced the evening's end. The nobles filed out in orderly procession, their whispers following them through the doors. Seren remained in her chair, exhausted beyond words. "You did well," Valdric said quietly. "I felt like prey, surrounded by hunters." "You were, but you did not run." His pale gaze held something like approval. "That takes strength." Before Seren could respond, a servant approached with a small folded paper. "Your Majesty, this was left for the Queen." The messenger did not give a name. Seren took the note with trembling fingers. Valdric frowned but did not stop her. She unfolded it. The handwriting was achingly familiar. She had seen it on birthday letters and secret notes passed beneath doors, on maps they had drawn together as children planning impossible escapes. Her sister's handwriting. Coralie, who she had believed dead for 3 years. After their parents were killed, Coralie had fled to a distant pack for shelter. But the hunters found them too, burned the pack house to the ground. Seren had mourned her sister as lost ever since. The message was brief, just 3 lines that shattered everything. "Run, sister. He is not your savior. He signed your exile order the night he brought you here. You were never meant to stay." Seren stared at the words until they blurred. Beside her, Valdric was speaking, asking what the message said. But she could not hear him over the roaring in her ears. Exile order. His signature. The night he saved her. He had promised her safety while his hand signed her banishment. Seren looked up at the man she had married, the king who had seemed so cold, but so reliable, and for the first time, she saw him as what he might truly be. Not her protector. Her executioner. 3 weeks had passed since the public introduction, and Seren had not slept soundly for any of them. She lay awake each night, staring at the canopy above, turning her sister's words over and over in her mind. The note was hidden beneath her pillow, but she did not need to see it. Every word was burned into her memory. "He signed your exile order the night he brought you here." It made a horrible kind of sense. Why would an Alpha King defy the Continental Treaty for a stranger? Why would he marry a void-blood, risk his alliances, anger the Crimson Order? The answer was simple. He wouldn't. Not unless there was something else at play. Unless he had never intended to keep her at all. Perhaps the marriage was a ruse. Perhaps he needed something from her first. Something only a void-blood could provide. And once he had it, the exile order would be enacted, and she would be thrown back to the hunters with no protection and no hope. Seren pressed her palms against her eyes until she saw stars. She had been so desperate to believe, so hungry for safety that she had swallowed his cold words without question. And now she might die for that foolishness, but she would not die ignorant. The next morning, Seren began her search. She moved carefully, aware that servants watched her every moment. She smiled at the right times, asked innocent questions, played the role of curious new queen exploring her home. No one suspected anything. The king's study was locked, but Seren had learned to pick locks before she learned to read. A skill born of necessity, honed by years of breaking into barns and abandoned houses for shelter. She waited until Valdric was occupied with his counsel, then slipped inside. The study smelled of him, cold pine and something metallic, like frost on iron. Seren ignored the way her wolf stirred at the scent and focused on the desk. Documents were stacked in neat piles, trade agreements, military reports, correspondence with other kingdoms. She rifled through them quickly, searching for anything bearing the words exile, or void blood, or her own name. Nothing. She checked the drawers, locked. She picked them open one by one. In the 3rd drawer, she found a leather folder sealed with the king's personal crest. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal and opened it. Inside were documents related to her. A report from the night she was found, detailing her wounds and condition. A brief history of the Crimson Order's pursuit. Notes on void blood abilities and weaknesses that made her stomach turn. And beneath all of that, a single sheet of parchment. An exile order. Her name was written clearly at the top. The charges listed her bloodline as grounds for permanent banishment from Ethermoor territory. The punishment for return was death. At the bottom, 2 lines waited for signatures. The first line was signed. Valdric's name, written in his sharp, precise hand, dated the night he had saved her. The second line was blank, awaiting the signature of the Royal Council to make the order official. Seren stared at the document, her chest hollowing with betrayal. He had signed it. Her sister was right. The night he carried her through his gates and promised her safety, he had already condemned her, but he had not submitted it. The council line was empty. The order had never been enacted. For 6 weeks, it had sat in this drawer, signed but incomplete. Why? You found it. Seren spun around. Valdric stood in the doorway. His expression was unreadable, but something shifted in those pale eyes. Resignation, perhaps, or regret. "You signed my exile order," Seren said, her voice shaking with fury and betrayal. "The same night you told me I was safe." "Yes." No denial, no excuses, just that single, flat word. "Why?" Seren demanded. "Why save me at all if you plan to throw me away?" Valdric stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "The Crimson Order demanded your surrender. Refusing them outright would have meant war. The Exile Order was a compromise, a way to satisfy the treaty while buying time." "Buying time for what?" "For me to find another solution." Seren laughed bitterly. "Another solution? You mean another way to dispose of me that doesn't make you look like a monster?" "I mean a way to keep you alive." His voice remained calm, but something cracked beneath it. "The Exile Order has never been submitted. It sits in that drawer because I have spent 6 weeks searching for a legal argument that would protect you permanently. The marriage was part of that." "The marriage was a lie. The marriage was a shield." He stepped closer, and Seren forced herself not to retreat. "As my queen, you are protected by royal immunity. The Crimson Order cannot touch you without declaring war on Ethermore. That was always the plan. A plan you never told me. Because I did not know if it would work." His jaw tightened. "And because I did not want you to live in fear while I figured it out." Seren shook her head. "You should have told me. You should have trusted me with the truth." "I do not trust anyone." The words hung between them, cold and final. Seren looked at this man, this king who had saved her, and lied to her, and married her, and signed her death warrant all in the same breath. She should hate him. She wanted to hate him, but all she felt was tired. "Is the danger past?" she asked quietly. "Am I safe now?" Valdric's silence was answer enough. "The Crimson Order is pressuring my council," he admitted finally. "Lord Talmec leads a faction that believes appeasing them is worth more than one void-blood queen. If they gain enough support, they could force the Exile Order through without my consent. Then I am not safe. Not yet." His eyes met hers. "But I am working on it." Seren studied his face, searching for deception. She found only exhaustion and something that might have been determination. "Why do you care?" she whispered. "Why fight so hard for a stranger? For a monster?" Valdric was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "Because I know what it is to be called a monster," he said. "And I know how it feels to be hunted for something you cannot control." Before she could ask what he meant, he turned and left. Seren stood alone in his study, the Exile Order still clutched in her hands, and wondered if she had just been given the truth or another beautiful lie. The weeks that followed were strange. Seren did not trust Valdric. How could she, after what she had discovered? But she could not deny that he was trying to keep her safe, trying to outmaneuver his council, trying to find a solution to a problem that had no easy answers. And despite everything, they began to talk. It started with small things. He would visit her chambers in the evening, ostensibly to discuss political matters she needed to understand as queen. But the conversations always drifted. He told her about the history of Ethermore, the wars his ancestors had fought, the alliances that held his kingdom together by threads. She told him about her years of running, the towns that had sheltered her, the people who had died for it, the guilt that never faded. "You blame yourself," Valdric observed one night. They were sitting by the fire in her chambers, a careful distance between them. "Of course I do. Everyone who helps me dies. That is not your fault. The Crimson Order killed them, not you. But they died because of me, because of what I am." Seren stared into the flames. "Sometimes I wonder if it would have been kinder to let the hunters take me. At least then no one else would suffer." "Do not say that." His voice was sharp, almost angry. "Your life has value, Seren, more than you know." She looked at him, surprised by the intensity in his tone. Why does it matter to you? He did not answer, but his gaze lingered on her face in a way that made her pulse quicken. As the days passed, Seren noticed things about her husband that she had missed before. He was always cold. Not just cool, but genuinely cold, as if his blood ran with ice water instead of fire. She would wake in the night to find him shivering beside her despite heavy blankets and roaring fires. She started keeping the hearth blazing constantly. She had Helene bring warmer clothes, thicker furs, small gestures he never acknowledged, but also never refused. "You are getting worse," Seren said one evening as they dined together in her chambers. He had barely touched his food, and his skin was paler than usual. "The cold. It is spreading." Valdric set down his fork. "It is nothing. It is not nothing. I can see it." She leaned forward. "What is happening to you?" For a long moment he did not speak. Then quietly, "It is a family affliction. All the kings of my line carry it." "An affliction?" "A curse, if you prefer the old word." His jaw tightened. "It does not matter. There is no cure." Seren wanted to press further, but something in his expression stopped her. A weariness so deep it seemed to reach his bones. "Is that why you said you could never love anyone?" she asked softly. Valdric's eyes snapped to hers. "What? When you proposed this marriage, you said you were incapable of love. Is the curse the reason?" He was silent for so long she thought he would not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "The curse responds to emotion. The more I feel, the colder I become." He looked away. "Love would kill me." Her breath died in her throat. "That is why you chose me, someone you could never love." "Yes. Because I was a stranger. A void blood. Someone easy to keep at a distance." "Yes." The word should have hurt. Instead, it made her ache for him in a way she did not expect. "I am sorry," she said quietly. Valdric looked at her with something like confusion. "For what?" "For whatever ancestor cursed you. For the life you have had to live because of it." She reached across the table and touched his hand. His skin was ice beneath her fingers. No one should have to choose between feeling and surviving. He stared at her hand on his. For a moment his composure cracked, and she saw the man beneath the king. Lonely, exhausted, desperate for something he could never have. Then the mask returned, and he pulled his hand away. "Thank you for dinner," he said stiffly. "I should go." But at the door, he paused. "Seren." "Yes?" "The exile order." He did not turn around. "I burned it. This morning. Whatever happens, you will not be banished." Then he was gone. Seren sat alone in her chambers, her hand still tingling from the cold of his touch, and realized something terrifying. She was starting to care for him. Not just gratitude, not just alliance, something deeper, something dangerous. She was falling for a man who could never love her back. A man who would die if he did. And she had no idea how to stop. 2 months after her wedding, Seren learned she was pregnant. The healer confirmed it with quiet certainty. A child was growing inside her, an heir to the frost throne. Seren sat in her chambers after the healer left, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, trying to process what this meant. She was carrying Valdric's child, a child who might inherit her void blood curse or his frozen affliction, or both. A child who would be born into a web of politics and danger and secrets. A child she already loved with a fierceness that terrified her. Valdric arrived that evening as he always did. They had fallen into a routine now. Dinners together, conversations that stretched into the night. A careful intimacy that was more than strangers, but less than lovers. He noticed immediately that something was different. "You are pale," he observed. "Are you unwell?" Seren looked at him. This cold king who had saved her and married her and burned her exile order. This man who made her pulse race even when he frustrated her. This man who could never love her without dying. "I am pregnant," she said. Valdric went completely still. "You are certain?" The healer confirmed it today. For a long moment, he did not move, did not breathe. Then, slowly, he crossed the room and knelt before her chair. "A child," he said quietly. His hand hovered near her stomach, not quite touching. "Our child." "Yes." Something broke in his expression. Joy and terror and wonder all tangled together. He looked up at her with that pale, piercing gaze, and for the first time it was not cold at all. "Thank you," he breathed. "Seren, thank you." Then he took her hand and pressed it to his lips, and she felt tears burning behind her eyes. But beneath the joy, fear coiled in her chest. He had what he needed now. An heir, the purpose of their marriage fulfilled. She remembered his words from their first meeting. "Once I have an heir, we will have nothing more to do with each other." "What happens now?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Valdric frowned. "What do you mean?" "You said the marriage was contractual, that once I gave you children, you would want nothing to do with me." The words spilled out before she could stop them. "You have your heir now, so what happens to me?" His frown deepened. "Seren, will you send me away?" Her voice cracked. "Find me some quiet estate where I can raise the child out of sight? Will you take the baby and—" "Stop." His hands gripped hers tightly. "Stop. Where is this coming from?" "From your own words." Seren was crying now, tears she could not control. "You said you would never love me, that this was purely transactional. And now the transaction is complete, so I was wrong." The words silenced her mid-sentence. Valdric's face was pained, his composure shattered. "I was wrong, Seren, about all of it. I thought I could keep you at a distance. I thought I could protect myself by never caring." His grip on her hands tightened. "But I do care. More than I should. More than is safe." Seren stared at him through her tears. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I do not want you to go anywhere. I am saying that when you enter a room, the cold inside me eases. I am saying that the thought of losing you is more terrifying than any curse." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I am saying that I love you, Seren, and I do not know how to stop." The words hung between them, beautiful and terrible. Then Valdric gasped. His hand flew to his chest, fingers clawing at his heart. His face went white, whiter than she had ever seen it. Frost began to spread across his skin, crystallizing along his jaw, his neck, his hands. "Valdric!" Seren caught him as he collapsed. "Valdric, what is happening?" "The curse," he choked out. "I told you. Love would kill me." "No." Seren shook her head wildly. "No, you cannot die. Not now. Not after—" But his eyes were already closing, and the frost was spreading faster, and his breathing was becoming shallow and labored. "Help!" Seren screamed. "Someone help! The king is dying!" Guards burst through the door. Healers were summoned. The room erupted into chaos. But Seren could only hold her husband's ice-locked body and scream. He had finally admitted he loved her, and it was killing him. The healers worked through the night. Seren refused to leave Valdric's side. She sat beside his bed, gripping his glacial hand, watching the frost creep slowly across his body. His breathing was shallow, his heartbeat faint. The cold radiated from him in waves that made the candles flicker and the air turn to mist. "The curse is accelerating," the head healer said grimly. "His core temperature is dropping faster than we can warm him. At this rate, he has perhaps a week, maybe less." "There must be something," Seren pleaded. "Some medicine? Some treatment?" "This is not an illness, Your Majesty. It is ancient magic, beyond our skill to cure." Seren wanted to scream, wanted to tear the world apart until it gave her an answer. Instead, she pressed Valdric's hand to her cheek and whispered, "I will not let you die. Do you hear me? I will not." His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and hazy with pain. Seren. Her name was a rasp on his lips. I am here. She leaned closer. I am right here. The curse, he managed. It cannot be broken. My father tried. His father before him. They all died when they fell in love. I do not accept that. A ghost of a smile crossed his frost-claimed features. Stubborn. Yes. Tears streamed down her face. And I will be stubborn enough for both of us. His hand tightened weakly on hers. If I die. You will not. If I die, he repeated, his voice fading. Protect our child. Promise me. I promise. She kissed his frozen fingers. But you are not going to die. I will find a way. His eyes closed again, and he slipped back into unconsciousness. Seren sat with him until dawn painted the windows gray. Then she rose, dried her tears, and went to find answers. The royal archives were buried deep beneath the fortress, in chambers that smelled of dust and forgotten centuries. Seren had demanded access, and no one had dared refuse the queen. She searched for 3 days. She read everything she could find about the curse, its origins, its history, every king who had fallen to it. The records were incomplete, fragmented by time and deliberate destruction, but slowly a picture emerged. The curse had been cast 400 years ago by a witch named Morvain. She had been the lover of King Aldric the Cold, Valdric's ancestor. When he abandoned her for a political marriage, she had cursed his bloodline with the very coldness he had shown her. Let every king of your line know the frost of a loveless heart, the curse was recorded as saying. And let any who dare to feel true love be consumed by the ice they have sown. It was poetic in its cruelty, a punishment that echoed through generations. But curses could be broken. Every magical binding had a key. Seren dug deeper. On the 4th day, she found it. A single page, nearly destroyed by age, written in Morvain's own hand. A contingency. A loophole she had built into her curse, perhaps out of guilt, or perhaps out of hope that someday, someone would prove worthy of escaping it. The frost that claims the heart can only be melted by its opposite, the page read. Fire given freely, fire born of love, fire that burns without consuming. Only this can break the chains I have forged. Fire. Seren's hand went to her back, to the mark that burned beneath her skin. She was a void blood. And void bloods carried elemental magic in their veins, magic that emerged at puberty and marked them forever. Magic that was supposed to be dangerous, unstable, and uncontrollable. Her element was fire. She had never used it, had never been trained. The void blood uprising generations ago had been led by fire wielders who burned entire cities. That was why her kind was hunted. That was why the Crimson Order existed. But the magic was still inside her. Dormant. Waiting. Fire born of love. Could she save him? Could she control something she had spent her entire life suppressing? There was only one way to find out. Seren did not tell anyone what she had discovered. She returned to Valdric's chambers where he lay unconscious and freezing, and she sat beside him through another long night. The frost had spread to his chest now. His heartbeat was barely perceptible. I have to tell you something, she whispered, knowing he probably could not hear her. Something I have never told anyone. She took a shaking breath. I am a void blood, you know that, but you do not know what that means. Not really. She touched the collar of her gown where it concealed her neck and shoulders. We are born with elemental magic. Fire, water, earth, air. It manifests at puberty and marks us forever. She stood and moved to the mirror on the wall. Slowly, she unfastened her gown, letting it fall to reveal her back. The mark covered her from shoulders to waist, swirling black lines that pulsed with dormant power, forming patterns that looked like flames frozen mid-dance. It was beautiful and terrible, the brand that had condemned her from the moment it appeared. My element is fire, she continued, turning back to face Valdric's still form. The same fire that burned cities during the uprising, the same fire that made my kind into monsters. She approached the bed and took his frozen hand. I have never used it. I was taught to suppress it, to fear it, to pretend it did not exist. And when my pack was slaughtered, when my family was burned alive by the very element I carry inside me, I swore I would never let it out. Tears fell onto his icy skin. But the curse that is killing you can only be broken by fire. Fire given freely. Fire born of love. She pressed her forehead to his hand. And I love you, Valdric. I love you more than I have ever loved anything. More than I love my own safety. She closed her eyes. So I am going to try. I am going to reach inside myself and find the fire I have been running from my entire life. And I am going to use it to save you. Her hand moved to rest on his chest over his frozen heart. Please do not let me hurt you, she breathed. Please let this work. Then she reached deep inside herself, past the fear and the suppression and the years of running, and she found the fire that had been waiting there all along. It roared to life like a beast uncaged. Heat flooded through her, more intense than anything she had ever felt. Her hands began to glow, first red, then orange, then brilliant white. The flames did not burn her. They felt like an extension of herself, like limbs she had forgotten she possessed. She pressed her burning hands to Valdric's chest. The frost hissed and steamed. His body arched off the bed. For a terrible moment she thought she was killing him faster. Then she felt it. The ice was melting. Not just on his skin, but deeper. Inside him. The frozen core that had been consuming him for days was finally beginning to thaw. Seren poured everything she had into the flames. All her love, all her hope, all her desperate need for him to survive. The fire responded, burning brighter, hotter, channeling through her hands and into his frozen heart. Minutes passed, hours. She lost track of time. Finally, exhausted beyond measure, she felt the last of the ice crack and shatter. Valdric gasped. His eyes flew open, clear and aware for the first time in days. Color flooded back into his skin. His hand came up to grip her wrist, and his touch was warm. Warm. Seren? His voice was hoarse but strong. What did you— Fire, she managed, swaying with exhaustion. I used fire. I am a voidblood, Valdric. A fire wielder. I should have told you, but I was afraid, and— He pulled her down and kissed her. The kiss was desperate and relieved and full of everything neither of them had been able to say. His arms wrapped around her, and for the first time, his body was warm against hers. When they finally broke apart, he touched her face with wonder. You saved me, he breathed. You used the power you feared most to save me. I love you, Seren said simply. I would have done anything. His eyes shone with tears he would probably never admit to. I love you too. I love you so much it nearly killed me. She laughed weakly. Perhaps we could find a less dramatic way to express it in the future. He pulled her close and held her, his warmth seeping into her exhausted body. Is the curse broken? She asked against his chest. I do not know completely, he admitted, but I feel different. For the first time in my life, I do not feel cold. The curse that was killing him had been pushed back. His body was free. But Seren sensed something deeper still lingering, not in him, but in the bloodline itself. The ancient magic was wounded, not destroyed. It was not a complete victory, but it was enough for now. The days that followed were a cautious miracle. Valdric recovered slowly but steadily. The frost that had consumed him did not return. His skin remained warm, his heart strong. The healers could not explain it, but they could not deny it either. The king was healed. Word spread quickly. The court whispered about miraculous recoveries and divine intervention. No one knew the truth except Seren, Valdric, and Helene, who had walked in during the healing and seen everything. Your secret is safe with me, the old servant had said, her eyes kind. "I always knew there was something special about you, my queen." But secrets had a way of escaping. 3 weeks after Valdric's recovery, a messenger arrived at the fortress gates. He bore the crimson serpent of the order and demanded an audience with the queen. Seren met him in the throne room, Valdric at her side. "The Crimson Order has received disturbing reports," the messenger announced, his voice carrying through the hall. "Reports that the Queen of Ethermoor is a void blood." Gasps rippled through the assembled court. Lord Talmec, standing near the front, smiled like a snake who had finally cornered its prey. "These reports are baseless," Valdric said coldly. "Are they?" The messenger produced a scroll. "We have testimony from multiple sources. A sister who claims to have seen the mark with her own eyes. Servants who witnessed strange occurrences during your majesty's recent illness." A sister. Coralie. Something cracked inside her chest. She had believed the note was a warning, a sign that her sister had survived and was trying to protect her. But now the truth became clear. The Order had spies in Valdric's court. Lord Talmec's faction had discovered the Exile Order and fed that information to Coralie, instructing her to send the note. They hoped the warning would make Seren panic and run, easier prey outside the castle walls. Coralie had been a pawn, used by both sides. "Even if these accusations were true," Valdric said, his voice like ice, "my queen is protected by royal immunity. The Continental Treaty does not apply to ruling monarchs." "Royal immunity can be revoked," the messenger replied, "if the monarch in question is found to have concealed material information before the marriage. A void blood identity certainly qualifies." Lord Talmec stepped forward. "Your Majesty, surely you see the situation we are in. The Order threatens war if we do not surrender the Queen. Our allies will abandon us. The kingdom will fall." "Then let it fall," Valdric said quietly. The court erupted. "You cannot be serious," Talmec shouted. "You would doom us all for one woman? One void blood?" "I would doom the world for her." Valdric's eyes blazed with fury, unrestrained and absolute. "She is my mate, the mother of my child, and I will burn anyone who tries to take her from me." The words echoed through the hall, silencing everyone. Then Seren stepped forward. "No," she said quietly. Valdric turned to her, confusion and fear warring in his expression. "Seren, I will not let you destroy your kingdom for me." She faced the messenger directly. "You want a void blood? Fine. But you will not take me without answers first." "What answers?" the messenger demanded. "The Order claims void bloods are dangerous, uncontrollable, that the uprising 4 centuries ago proves we are monsters." Seren's voice strengthened. "But I just used my fire magic to save the king's life. Controlled. Precise. For love, not destruction." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "The real question," Seren continued, "is why the Order is so desperate to destroy us. What are they really afraid of?" "This is irrelevant," the messenger snapped. "The treaty?" "The treaty was signed after the uprising," Seren interrupted. "But I have been researching. The uprising was not started by void bloods. It was started by a single fire wielder who was provoked, betrayed, driven mad by those who should have protected her." She looked at Lord Talmec, whose face had gone pale. "Morvain," Seren said quietly, "the witch who cursed Valdric's bloodline. She was a void blood, a fire wielder, and she was the lover of King Aldric the Cold." The court went absolutely silent. Aldric abandoned her for a political marriage. She cursed him in revenge. And then she went mad with grief and started the uprising that destroyed half the continent. Seren's eyes never left Talmec. "But that is not the whole story, is it, my lord?" Talmec's composure cracked. "I do not know what you are implying. Your family was there, in the records, buried so deep I almost missed them. House Talmec served King Aldric. They were the ones who advised him to abandon Morvain. They were the ones who helped cover up the truth after the uprising." She stepped closer, and Talmec retreated. The Crimson Order was not created to protect the world from Voidbloods. It was created to hide the guilt of those who caused the uprising in the first place. And your family has been profiting from that lie for 400 years. The hall exploded into chaos. The investigation that followed uncovered everything. Lord Talmec's family records, seized by royal decree, revealed generations of correspondence with the Crimson Order, bribes, manipulations, deliberate hunts targeting Voidbloods who came too close to discovering the truth. The Order itself fractured. Many of its members had genuinely believed they were protecting the world from monsters. When they learned they had been tools of a centuries-old cover-up, they were horrified. Talmec was arrested, tried, and convicted of conspiracy spanning 400 years. His lands were stripped, his title revoked. He would spend the rest of his life in the dungeons he had hoped to fill with Voidblood prisoners. But the most important discovery came from Morvaine's own journals, found in a hidden vault beneath House Talmec's estate. The witch had built a failsafe into her curse, a way to break it completely, not just for one king, but for the entire bloodline. The fire healing Seren had performed had saved Valdric's life, but the curse lived in the bloodline, not just the man. To free their children, to free every future king, they needed to complete what Seren had started. The final component required both parties to speak their love aloud, freely, and without reservation, while the Voidblood's fire burned between them. Seren and Valdric performed the ritual that same night, in the privacy of their chambers, with only Helene as witness. "I love you," Valdric said, his hands clasped around hers as fire danced between their palms. "I love your courage and your stubbornness, and your ridiculous insistence on saving everyone around you. I love that you saw me as a man before you saw me as a king. I love that you fought for me when I had given up fighting for myself." Seren smiled through her tears. "I love you too. I love your coldness that was never really cold. I love your protection that asked for nothing in return. I love that you burned my exile order instead of using it. I love that you chose me when you could have chosen anyone." The fire flared brilliant white, then faded to gentle warmth. And something shifted in the air. Something ancient and heavy lifted, dissipating like mist in morning sun. The curse was broken. Not just for Valdric, but for every king who would come after him. Their child would never have to choose between love and survival. Their grandchildren would never know the frost that had plagued their ancestors. 400 years of suffering, ended by a hunted Voidblood and a king who defied his own laws to save her. 6 months later, Seren gave birth to a daughter. She had dark hair like her mother and gray eyes like her father, and she was warm from the moment she entered the world. Valdric held her with trembling hands, tears streaming down his face. "She is perfect," he breathed. "She is ours," Seren agreed. They named her Aveline, after Valdric's mother, who had died when the curse took her husband and left her alone. It felt right to honor the past while building a new future. Coralie came to see them 2 months later. The truth had emerged during the investigation. The Order had captured her during the Packhouse fire and offered her a choice: help them find Seren or die. They had given her information about the Exile Order and instructed her to send the note, hoping the warning would make Seren panic and flee the castle walls where she would be easier prey. But Coralie had written it, hoping Seren would understand, that she would find a way to protect herself without leaving. She had been trying to warn her sister and satisfy the Order's demands. A desperate gamble from a desperate woman. "I never wanted to hurt you," Coralie whispered, clutching Seren's hands. "I was so scared. I thought if I helped them, maybe they would leave us both alone. And I wrote that note hoping you would see through it, that you would find a way to stay safe without running." "I know," Seren said softly. "I know." The sisters rebuilt their relationship slowly, carefully. Trust was not easily restored. But love, Seren had learned, could survive almost anything. The kingdom changed too. Valdric officially revoked the Continental Treaty, declaring voidblood citizens of Ethermore with full rights and protections. Other kingdoms followed, slowly at first, then faster as the truth about the Order spread. The Crimson Order dissolved within a year. Some of its members joined Valdric's new initiative to find and protect voidbloods instead of hunting them. Others simply disappeared, their purpose gone. And Seren? Seren learned to use her fire. She trained with the few voidblood elders who had survived the centuries of persecution. Her flames became tools instead of weapons, warming homes and healing wounds, and lighting the darkness for those who had lost their way. She was no longer hunted, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. She was a queen, a mother, a wife, and a voidblood. All of these things at once, without contradiction. One evening, as the sun set over Ethermore and painted the sky in shades of fire, Valdric found her in the garden with Aveline sleeping in her arms. "You are thinking again," he observed, sitting beside her. "I am remembering," she corrected. "The night you saved me in the thornwood. I was so certain I was going to die." "And now?" She looked at him. This man who had promised her safety and signed her exile and burned that order and nearly died for loving her, and stood against his entire kingdom to keep her. "Now I am certain I am going to live," she said. "Really live. For the first time in my life." He kissed her temple, and she leaned into his warmth. "You saved me first, you know," he said quietly. "Long before you broke the curse. The night you agreed to marry a monster who could never love you, you saved me from a life of endless cold. You were never a monster. Neither were you." They sat together in the fading light, their daughter sleeping peacefully between them, and watched the fire paint the sky. Two people who had been called monsters their entire lives. Two people who had found home in each other. The Alpha King had promised her safety, then signed her exile order before she woke. But in the end, he had burned that order, defied his kingdom, and nearly died to keep her. And she had wielded the fire everyone feared to save him right back. They were both hunters and hunted, protectors and protected. They were both finally, completely free. Thank you for listening to this story. Let me know what you thought in the comments. I read every single one, and they mean more than you know. Until next time.